Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie and Paul Gibson, with loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world. We deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. What are we talking about today, Charles?
Compliance, confusion, FMCSA, maybe where to find the decoder ring so you can understand everything.
There is a lot. And everything is changing, just like everything has been changing. So there's a lot going on with that. I mean, Duffy's done some cool stuff. Some things have gone backwards, some things have gotten forwards, and I'm sure there's somebody out there doing something weird, and it's impossible to keep up with. Just like the amount of platforms that we're on. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Amazon Music. We are on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're basically everywhere you get your podcasts. So if you could go like, subscribe, rate, helps give us a little bit more momentum so we can be out there and do cooler stuff like some of the stuff we're going to be doing later this year.
Yeah, you can also go to centspermilepodcast.com. You can suggest a topic to be a guest or even to become one of our event or sponsors.
Sponsors? Who's our sponsor today, Charles?
Well, that's pretty interesting because it's Stars, Stripes, and White Lines Truck Show. Do you have the balls to publicly support our fallen veterans? At Stars, Stripes, and White Lines Truck Show, November 7th through the 8th at Echo Park Speedway in Hampton, Georgia, put on by the Bennett family of companies and to benefit reefs across America, they'll be dropping hundreds of balls sponsored by people like you from a Huey helicopter. And depending on where it lands, you could win up to $10,000. So go get your balls today at Stars, Stripes, and White Lines Truck Shows.com.
All right, cool. Well, that leads us to the news. All right, so it's time for 10-2 News, where we look at the most interesting, controversial, relevant, or just basically whatever stories we want to look at from the past week or two. So since we're talking about compliance, the first one we're going to talk about is AI company debuts drive-through inspection system for commercial trucks. Yeah, so a company that's specializing in AI-powered vehicle inspections technology rolled out a new drive-through scanner system that's specifically for commercial fleets. On September 17th, UVI, a vehicle inspection technology company based in the U.S. and Israel, announced expansion of its existing passenger vehicle services so that Class 6 and 8 trucks and buses are now supported as well, allowing fleets to give their trucks basically an MRI for vehicles with an automated 17-point inspection. Wow.
Seems like a colonoscopy for trucking.
Well, it's just like, I don't.
And I have questions like.
Yeah, I have so many questions.
Well, tons of it, man. First off, do we ask them to turn their head and cough as they go through? Secondly, like, at what point do we just say enough's enough? I understand that there's security in this stuff, but these things exist. These things are super expensive for places to implement. These are mostly seen at, secure facilities, bases, ports, borders. But it's not like, your local hometown terminal is going to put one of these in.
Right. And it's also one of those things too, where it's like, but are they?
And from a driver's standpoint, Israel being involved in it, the U.S., like, I don't know. When it comes to things like this, I really want to see it housed, ran, and managed exclusively in the U.S. I think anytime you get more hands in the pot, there's safety concerns, and I think you got to be very transparent at how deeply ingrained those other countries are in that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even at that point, especially with geopolitics and stuff, like having the supply chain, the more of the supply chain that is not at home, regardless of where it's at. Like, I don't care if it's an allied country or not. Like, that's, especially when you start talking cyber, but that's we don't need to go down that rabbit hole for sure. But I would absolutely agree with that. And it's just like, I don't know, like sometimes like MRIs miss stuff.
Well, I do like the, how do we automate it? How do we make it faster? How do we make it more painless for the people going through it? But I do wonder at what point do we wind up complicating a one-car funeral?
I also, looking at the list, so it says, assisted by AI technology, UVI says that scanners can detect the following: tires, wear, mismatched sets, compliance issues, underbody, leaks, cracks, rusts, or hidden structural damage, exterior, scratches, dents, and other hard-to-spot flaws. So, like...
This is I go back to my joke, my pun earlier. This is like getting a colonoscopy, and then when you fail, you get a ticket at the end.
Right, but can you also say it's like an MRI when it just sees the outside? Hey, we're going to take an X-ray of the top layer of your skin. Like what?
Yeah, this is the equivalent for trucking, and I could see how it could be abused. But like, could you imagine going through an MRI and then like instead of you getting the results, they give it to your wife or significant other, and then you got to get a lecture for each one of the things that they found? Like, this is terrible. Like, I could see someone being like, "Wow, come on out of there! I got tickets written up for you already."
Charles, you clearly did not stop smoking. Like zin my butt. Yeah, I've actually been at about a year, except for at conferences. But
yeah, no, this is what I want to see how it's used and how it gets released out there. I'll reserve my judgment until then.
Yeah, I'm just gonna complain about everything. So Bill calls. Next one is Bill calls for increased enforcement of 28-hour law for livestock haulers. Lawmakers are considering legislation to increase animal welfare by cracking down on enforcement of the 28-hour law for livestock haulers. On September 10th, Nevada Congresswoman Dina Titus announced the introduction of the Humane Transport of Farmed Animals Act. The bill would require the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Department of Agriculture to develop a mechanism to monitor compliance within the 28-hour law, which requires animals to be offloaded for food, water, and rest if they have traveled 28 hours or more. I don't hate that.
No, I mean, I get it, man. And I've done hiring, and I know a lot of people that do livestock haul, and I can see from a sanitation and safety, food safety standpoint, not to mention the sustainability of trying to not keep sick animals or animals that aren't prepared to travel together for lengthy periods of time. So I can see it.
It also is kind of like a weird, I'm not trying to get too in the weeds on this one either, but it's kind of a weird flex to be like, oh yeah, we got to treat them right while we're transporting them to the places where we completely mistreat them.
Yeah, I mean, dude, listen, that job's tough to hire for. I've had to hire for livestock haulers, and one of the biggest things I've seen is the turnover there, because some people get into that job and they start trying to name the burger as it's getting off the ramp, and I'm like, yeah, no, don't name it. Like, do you name your burger before you throw it in the frying pan? No? Okay. Same concept here. But that job sucks.
Red Lobster vibes, man, you know. But I think the solution to this problem is just like, I mean, the easy answer.
Well, humane. Be humane.
Bring back the toothpicks, man. They'll make it in time.
Jeez. All right. But we do have a loaded lineup, so we're going to make news real short today because we got a lot going on. We got to get behind the desk with Tenstreet, and then we got a lot of clear heads with a lot of knowledge to come help break down the FMCSA, and I think we're going to need all of it. So,
all right. Well, let's go behind the desk with Tenstreet.
Do you want to grow your fleet but get buried by paperwork, slow hiring processes, and outdated systems, all while struggling to comply with changing safety regulations? Enter Tenstreet, the all-in-one platform that simplifies driver lifecycle management by bringing marketing, recruiting, onboarding, safety, and retention together in one place. Tenstreet coordinates and streamlines all your operations. Post to dozens of job boards at once. Speed time to hire with pre-population and AI to get more full applications faster, and manage the entire post-hire process, from cutting costs with online onboarding, to integrating all safety data into one dashboard, to improving retention through thoughtful engagement. Whether you have one truck or 1,000, our expert team is here to help. Sleep soundly knowing you can pass an audit, attract needed drivers, and achieve your business goals. Join the thousands of carriers using Tenstreet. Sign up for a demo today.
Get ready for the Stars, Stripes, and White Lines Truck Show, November 7th and 8th at Echo Park Speedway. beautiful truck. Hear the ripping riffs of trucker turned country star Tony Justice. This show's got balls, hundreds of them, and we're going to drop them from a Huey military helicopter to support wreaths across America and a chance to win $10,000. If this doesn't excite you, you might as well move to Canada. So start your engines and we'll see you there.
All right, well, it's time to make sense. And when you're trying to make sense of the FMCSA, you got to bring in some ringers. So that's exactly what we did. We have Rob Carpenter with Truck Safe Consulting, Sam Watts with Watchmen, and Dale Prax with FreightValidate. And guys, welcome to Cents Per Mile. I really want to dive into the FMCSA stuff. It's one of the most popularly confused topics out there. With it ever changing in the world we live in right now, it can be confusing and intimidating. So if you can succeed in anything with today's show, it's make it less intimidating. Can you make sense of this nonsense?
What do you
I don't think they'll be able to, because if they could, they wouldn't have jobs.
That's hard to do right off the top, man. Touche.
You can help though.
Is there a color by numbers version of this shit?
You can definitely make a Cliff Notes out of it. I don't know if I color by numbers. That's too simple.
All right, so Rob, we'll start with you. With everything going on with the FMCSA and the changes right now, what's one of the things that you believe everyone should be paying attention to the most?
Oh Lord, dude, I don't know. It's a lot going on right now. I don't know. I guess the hours of service thing would probably have more effect on more people. But then you've got we had the proposal to add fentanyl to the drug panel, so that happened a week ago.
It makes sense in today's world with how impactful fentanyl has been in just the nation as a whole. You would think you'd want it in the drug testing panel. I can't imagine anyone saying, yeah, we don't want that.
Well, I've kind of been like, I mean, we've had a fentanyl problem for how long, and now we're just adding it to the CDL pool. Like, has everybody been driving high on fentanyl? We just haven't known it. So,
well, they used to have those drugged up toothpicks for the bull haulers. So, I mean, anything's possible.
that's like the equivalent of Delta 8 now. Like, it's still legal, but not probably the right thing to do, I guess.
I mean, I could see the fentanyl in the hair testing. There's a lot of mixed opinions on the hair testing side of that, the expansion of the oral fluids. I think the hair testing thing, depending on where you sit and what job you have, depends on how you feel about this, is kind of generally where I've seen it funneled. But I do think it's one of those things where I can't believe we're having these conversations now. Like, these things have been out, like hair testing has been around forever now. It feels like back when I was driving, it was still a thing.
Well, I mean, for hair testing, there's a lot of companies that still, they do hair testing now, but they do it for internal policy driven tests, not for FMCSA. So it's just I guess you're now, I mean, it actually became a thing before. It's just it's like oral fluid. Like we passed it as a rule, and now we just can't use it because we don't have clinics. So I think a lot of this stuff is playing catch up. It's not that it hasn't existed and we haven't had the technology for it and people aren't doing it. It's just we can't do it because FMCSA or HHS hasn't got their stuff together, whether it's because of labs or whatever reason. You got a rule that you can't use. So,
and Sam, from your perspective, when we're paying attention to everything that's ever evolving at the FMCSA level right now, what's some of the things you think people are struggling with the most to stay up to date on?
Well, first of all, let me just say I feel personally attacked by all this hair testing talk. Okay, I'm just saying I didn't come on here to be to be subject to that. No,
Dude, you got a free pass.
Yeah, they could take it off the goatee or the arm, or I don't know, pick your poison.
Boy, sometimes you get Dale, you can understand, and Paul, and well, I guess all of us could kind of understand. You get some of this caught in a zipper. Holy cow, that hurts. That hurts. That'll wake you up in the morning.
How do you get your goatee caught in a zip? You know what? We're going to stay on task here.
Anyways, what was the question again? What were you trying to ask before?
No, as far as the FMCSA goes, there's a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot to get lost in. I mean, what do you think is one of the biggest areas of struggle for today's carriers to stay compliant with such a confusing and evolving system?
Oh man, that's a great question. And it's funny because me and Rob were just together a couple weeks ago at the Truck Safe Boot Camp, and is always kind of one of the big questions is what should we concentrate on? What should we look at? And, it's always interesting because there's carriers that are doing things that are great, and then there's carriers that are doing things wrong. And, I wish there was like a blanket thing, like no one does this great, but some have, good driver qualification files and that's all buttoned up, but they don't have a good drug policy or a drug program. I mean, and everyone can speak to this too, Rob, I know you can, but like, it's alarming how many companies you talk to out there that still don't even know kind of what the clearinghouse even is, and it's like you are hiring commercial motor vehicle drivers and you don't know what it is. Like, have you done background checks? Are you even doing the drug tests? So I think, even though it's been out for a couple of years now, it seems like the clearinghouse is still one of the most misunderstood or not even used pieces that is a requirement now out there for carriers. And just kind of understanding how that works and why you need to use it. I would say that's probably a bigger one right now. And now, like we said, with the fentanyl testing coming out, I mean, the FMCSA is leaning more into the clearinghouse. And if you're not a part of it or you don't know what it is, now's probably the time to really get familiar with it.
Well, I mean, do you think part of that is like the rollout and the confusion that started with the clearinghouse? Because I mean, when they first came out with it, one of the reasons they were justifying it is over enough time we would collect enough data where that could even help impact and reduce the time wasted on VOEs, and yet we've yet to do that. And there's plenty of data there now to simplify that process. Instead, you got people out there charging for VOEs right now. Talk about highway robbery.
Yeah, I think VOEs are going to be brought to the forefront, or maybe they even are. I'm not, too certain, but I know like VOEs, people are starting to charge for them now, and that's a required step that you need to take in the hiring process. So I would be surprised, and like I said, maybe Rob and Dale know more about this than I do, if the FMCSA is going to be starting to look into the previous employment stuff and almost, I don't know what the word is, kind of that,
Regulate.
Yeah, regulate it a little bit to say like, hey, you can't charge $100 to do something that's necessary. I mean,
when we're talking about the government getting involved, we're talking regulation, brother. There's only one word to describe it.
Sure, but at the same time, and I'm not for government involvement, but at the same time, like if you're just going to let this market run and you're going to have companies charge $50 to $100 or $25, whatever, for a necessary step. Okay, so they're even getting higher now. I mean, who's to stop them? I mean, again, it's a required thing. Yeah, well, yeah, it's a required step that you have to take, and like now all of a sudden you're going to have to spend $300, and depending on how many previous employers the drivers had in the last couple of years, I mean, you're spending thousands of dollars almost now.
Averaging three a year for most drivers. So you go back period of time, like if you're one of the big carriers that have constant churn, you could be racking up some serious dollars just doing that. Could be your business model.
I agree, but yeah, is the only answer to that is, like you said, regulations. But do we want that? We're already heavily regulated. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you on that.
Well, the current administration said for every one that you put in, you got to take so many out. So if we put that one in, I could imagine we take out some junk, maybe, possibly, hopefully.
There's no junk regulations out there.
Hours of service.
I think it's actually a good question for Dale, because I know that you're involved in a lot of like government side stuff, and Duffy has came out and said that he wants to roll back a lot of stuff, and he had like all that plan to roll back a lot of things, like the different stuff with the deaf, all kinds of things. So from like a safety and compliance standpoint, since this kind of is going in the opposite direction in a lot of ways while still moving forward in some ways, does that make it more complicated, or because some things are getting pulled back, does it make it easier? What does that look like, just navigating those changes in general?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that they need to pull back some of the regulations are we have plenty of regulations on file. We can talk about MAP 21, which hasn't been followed in almost 12 years. We can talk about hours of service regulation. We can talk about imminent danger, imminent hazard, out of service violation, put people out of service that are imminent hazards. We have all the regulations out there. The problem we don't have any enforcement. So if you have regulations without enforcement, they're just suggestions to the bad guys, right? We suggest you don't violate the law. And so maybe it's time to get rid of some of those regulations that don't really mean anything and start pumping up enforcement on the regulations that exist. And that's where we're kind of missing the mark. I was lucky enough yesterday and the day before to be in Washington, D.C. and talk to some legislators I talked to the Tennessee and Kentucky delegation regarding some regulations within FMCSA. Regulations like, let's give back the ability to impose civil penalties to the FMCSA that they lost in 2019. That's a start. Let's start fining people $10,000. Let's start putting people in prison. That's one of the reasons that you asked what's important to us in the industry that the FMCSA can do. And I have to take to the Senate. Let's get Derek Bars confirmed so we can have a leader of the FMCSA. We haven't had one since 2019, really, except for the 16 months that Robin Hutchins was in there. We have had no leadership. If you have no leadership, you have no control. And so let's get that going. And, you know, I was talking to somebody yesterday on the Hill and said, we need Bars because he's going to start putting people behind them.
I wonder if that's one of the things, though, is having facilitating those conversations on a more boots on the ground level. Like they've done it for social media pushes. I've seen that, but I really want to see the FMCSA. I want to see DOT. I want to see them having those conversations outside of just social media, like getting down there outside of the truck stops and your Facebook posts. Like there's enough. We have Drivers Appreciation Week. We know when we're being given lip service. But I want to see those conversations facilitated on a more mass level. Hearing from the men and women doing the job, you know, from the compliance standpoint, that's you all. From a recruiting standpoint, that's us all. That from a driver standpoint, that's them. I think if we can truly share the pain points of each one of these individual endeavors that we are fighting, I think we can have some meaningful change. But do they want to have? Do you get the temperature check that they're actually trying to have those conversations, or is it more lip service?
In conversations I've had with Mr. Bars, I spoke to him about 3 weeks ago, and I think he is all about not having the agency work in a silo, right? You have to take information from the industry and educate the agency on what really happens out here. I've had conversations with the agency and talked to them. You know, I've been pushing this initiative that says, if you want to get your operating authority, you should have a TWIC card first as a prerequisite. Some senior folks I talked to in the agency asked me what a TWIC card was. So we need to really have the industry talking to the agency and vice versa. And I think if you want to build any kind of task force, there has to be members of the industry, like putting Rob on it, putting Sam on these committees, not just listening to somebody in the agency, but the agency listening to us, because we're going to be able to tell them what's going on. A lot of them really don't know.
Now, Rob, with your involvement in this, are you feeling like we're actually in a time where people are receptive to have these conversations and actually hear the problem and not just, you know, put lipstick on a pig?
Yeah, I mean, I get that impression, but I think one of the things you have to look at too is like what's the aptitude for what they're hearing, right? Like, I think let's just, without naming the person, say our last Secretary of Transportation, I was not a huge fan of, right? So
did they have a fan club?
He does, but it's not the one I'm in. So he, I think part of it is like hearing something and understanding it and then applying it to a practical level yourself. Like, what is your aptitude for understanding what's happening with trucks? That guy does not, it's not him, right?
He Googled it.
Well, yeah, but, I'm not going to say what I want to say. I'll lose, but,
he did better with airports though.
Well, the airports are different. If we're going to compare FAA to FMCSA,
it's still transportation.
Well, they get 10,000 people to work with, right? We only have less than 1,000, which is insane. That's a huge part of it too. It's not just the leadership factor. They don't have the human resources for it. So I think you've got an administration that's more not only capable and interested in listening to the front line, they have the aptitude of understanding what the front line is saying when they say it. So I think Duffy's more not only accessible, not only listening, but has the ability to understand what he's hearing.
Yeah, and I think they're generally trying to reach across and hear the conversations, make meaningful change. In the current environment, it seems like it's almost out of necessity too. Like they really need to get this right. They're under heavy scrutiny already. They make a lot of changes to the industry. They want to make a lot of impact. And in doing so, they have to make the right impact. Otherwise, on a mass scale, everyone's going to be sitting there out there yelling gotchas at them. So I get the pressure that they're under. I mean, you got how many Pauls in the world?
Hey, I will say I have given Duffy his flowers so many times. I'll say it out loud, better than Pete when it comes to trucks, just not airplanes.
Yeah, I think that Vivek Ramaswamy, when he was running for office, he said something that was really kind of important. That said, you wouldn't put a director in charge of the Food and Drug Administration that doesn't know anything about food or drugs. Why are we putting somebody in charge of trucking that knows nothing about it? And that's where we've been in the previous administrations. We put people in charge of stuff that know nothing about it.
What builds my affirmation and faith in the current setup is I know enough people in the industry that know conversations are happening with those right people, like people like yourselves in those rooms having those conversations. That makes me happy, like much better than like some cabinet put up inside an administration that has never seen a truck outside of Google. And if you ask them to find a picture of a truck, they're going to show you something from Europe.
What's more important, I think, than us going there and talking to those members of Congress and their staffers is that they're finally listening to us. Last year was the first year when we'd go in for the fly-in, we'd get there and they'd say, what is a broker? What are you even talking about? Now when we go in there, they say, I think the bill is progressing on principal place of business. When we walk in the door now, they know what we're talking about and they're still pushing it through.
What a concept. People running something that understand what's happening.
And there are more representatives. I talked to 2 representatives from Tennessee yesterday, and they knew what we were talking about. They signed themselves up to be sponsors of some of these bills because they want to be involved in it. We haven't seen that in a long time.
That's because it's Tennessee, brother. If you were in misery, it'd be different.
Hey.
Even Michelle Bachmann's office was, one of her staffers has a lot of friends that work for Scheme and some others work for Covenant and U.S. Express. This kid knew more about brokering than a lot of brokers that I know knew. And he's working for Michelle Bachmann, with the senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, and he's teaching her a lot about it. So I looked at some of the notes that she had, and she knew a lot about transportation. And so that really is going to help our industry when these politicians start caring because their grandkids are on those same highways that we're on. And so when they start seeing this stuff happening, it starts to affect them. And one of the things that one of the staffers, I forget which one, said that, he brought up to our attention, he says, do you realize that every 100 trucks you pass on the road, only 3 of those, the FMCSA knows if they're safe or not.
That's crazy. So I want to go down the line here real quick. We'll start with you, Sam. What's one thing you think the FMCSA really needs to be paying attention to right now and get it right? That's going to be heavily impactful.
Well, unfortunately, we saw just a couple weeks ago, the whole Florida deal. Like, are the drivers on the road supposed to be on the road? What is the training procedures that these drivers are going through? Because, like as Dale said there, they don't know if all these drivers should be out there. And, in working with different companies and stuff like that, I see a lot of times where, I'll look through stuff and I'll go to them and say, look, I can't prove that this driver you have driving for you should be on the road. Like, yes, you say he's got a CDL and everything, but you don't have anything in his files to prove that. I don't have any documentation that proves that. So, like, what has this driver done to be on the road? And unfortunately, there's a lot of drivers that are out on the road that probably shouldn't be, or they should have more training behind the wheel. I know me and Rob talked about this a couple weeks ago, like how just limited training you actually need to have to be out on the highway. So I think get to know the drivers and make sure that they're supposed to be out there on the road.
All right. And for you, Dale, what's one of the things that you think we need to be focused on right now that's going to make the most impact?
Registration. I think that we need to not just look at the driver on the side of the road that's in the accident. Let's look at the company that hired him. One of the conversations I had with Mr. Bars was that when that officer or that scale house pulls in a truck, they should have more to look at than just how his mud flaps look, if his tires are flat, all those kind of things. Let's look at the company that sent him on that road. And let's be able to pull up things like how many companies is he affiliated with? Are they legally affiliated? All those kind of things should be available so he can shut down the entire company, not just that driver that day.
And Rob, how do you feel about where we're going and what needs to be the focus that's going to be driving positive change?
Well, I think the biggest things that I usually push are who are you hiring and what are you buying and who and what are you putting on the highway? And then that's for the carrier side. And then for the government side is who are we giving authority to, and the training aspect in terms of creating a licensing standard that's that makes sense, that actually has some elements to it that are practical, and there's some accountability aspects too. But it all stems down to who and what we're putting on the highway. So licensing standards, training, who we're giving authority to.
Oh, definitely appreciate your guys' insights on this. It gets very confusing when people are trying to learn what to pay attention to, what to be watching ahead for, and especially in anything that's happened this year. Everything's moving fast paced. Everything's very discombobulating. So appreciate you guys. In a nutshell, Paul, what I gathered is people are tired of dodging dummies out there. No one wants to be clotheslined by a semi truck doing illegal U-turns, and we need a higher barrier to entry.
Yeah, and I think it's also one of those things, regardless of, how you feel on the political landscape and all of that, it is nice to see things actually happening on the trucking side of transportation.
Yeah, you just got to take to Twitter and rage post over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, we don't have to get into the supply chain, but actual trucking is great. So anyway, but I think that about wraps up our time.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.